Hi guys, so here I am making cheese, or at least hopefully making cheese. This is my third attempt in 4 days because I'm having some trouble, and I want to talk to you a little bit about troubleshooting if you are having trouble with your cheese. And I've been having trouble with curds setting. So I've been getting some curds, but not a lot, and they've been a little bit sloppy. So this here is the curds that I got from my last set of cheese, and this was from probably 4 litres of milk, and I'd normally get at least double that amount. However, I am going to get some cheese out of here. The whey's coming out nice and clear, so you know this will give me some cheese. But I've been making cheese for about 3 years, and I've never had the problems that I'm having this year. But I am going to talk to you about some of the ways you can troubleshoot your own cheese if you're not getting curds setting, and it is one of the most common problems. There's a few troubleshooting tips and steps that I've already gone through, and I'm now, I think, at the point where I've solved my problem. And I'll bring you with me as I make this cheese and see if I'm right. But I'm going to talk to you about all the other things that I sort of went through in my checklist first. So the first thing on my checklist was rennet. How old was my rennet? Now I'm using rennet and starter culture to make my cheese. It's a really simple soft cheese recipe. Basically, bring the milk up to 90 degrees, cool it as quickly as I can down to 22 degrees, add some starter culture and some rennet. This isn't a cheese making recipe video, although I have done one of those. If you search through my videos, you'll find my cheese making. But this is just a simple soft cheese that I'm making, and because it wasn't setting, the first thing on my list to check was rennet. Now, rennet doesn't keep for a very long time. It's got a best before date, which will be printed on the bottle if you're using a bottled rennet. And mine was actually out of date. Now that date is going to be if you keep it in the fridge. Rennet must be kept in the fridge, and it will usually last for a few months, 6 or 7 months. So don't overbuy your rennet, buy a small amount at a time. And as you can see, I've replaced it with this new stuff. So I'm now using new rennet. I used new rennet on yesterday's milk, and while there was a small improvement, it's still not the results that I'm looking for. I really want lots of really firm curds, which I wasn't getting, and I want to get them within 24 hours with this recipe. What you can do, I actually had to leave this. This was left 36 hours to get just this amount. If your milk is setting into curds, but not a lot, you can leave it a little bit longer, but that is going to affect the outcome of your cheese. It could get slightly off flavors, it could get slightly more bitter. I don't know what quality of cheese I'm going to get out of this batch until it's finished, but like I said, I had to leave it 12 hours longer than the recipe that I'm using suggested. That was how I managed to get those curds to set. You can leave it a little bit longer, but really what you want to do is you want to stick to what it says on the recipe, and you want whatever the recipe tells you is going to happen. So that was the first thing that I changed. And with changing the rennet, that didn't solve my problem. So what's next? Well, I've been using starter culture that I made 2 years ago, and I keep in the freezer in ice cube trays, and that's how I use it. And I thought, well, maybe after doing a little bit of digging online, maybe 2 years is about at its limit. So what I did next was I made some more starter culture. Now, the easiest way to make starter culture is to buy a little packet of something that you add to your milk. And once you've done that, you've got your starter culture. I was going to show you it, but it's in the other freezer. But we've saved that in ice cube trays, and that's now freezing as we speak. And in here is the fresh starter culture that I've made in the last 24 hours. So this is what I'm going to be using on this batch. However, because I did get curds to set, I'm confident that wasn't my issue. And I'm also confident that I've actually found it. The last thing that's a really common mistake and really easy to get wrong is the temperature that you're actually leaving your milk to set at. Now, before I talk about that, I'm just going to quickly, this is now up to temperature. I need to get it up to around 90 degrees, and we're there. I need to get this in the sink and cool it down as quickly as I can. So we just cool it down with cold water out the tap, and we have that running through the sink, lifting my pot so the cold water can get underneath it. And then every minute or so, I lift the plug, let some of the water out, and top up with fresh cold water. And now what we're trying to do is reduce that temperature down from 90 degrees down to about 20, 22 degrees. And we want to do that as soon as we can. So, as I said, I think that I've identified our problem, and I think it's the temperature that we are actually letting our curds form at. Now, they want to be, for my recipe, and all recipes will vary, for my recipe wants to be, again, kept between 20 and 22 degrees. And we're just not reaching that. It's the end of April here, beginning of May, and we try and run as sustainably as we can. And this is the only heating that we really have in our house at the moment. When it gets really, really cold, we've got central heating that we use, but we try not to use it. We try not to use it any more than we have to. It's an oil-fired system that obviously relies on fossil fuels. So we're trying not to use it. And obviously, what that means is a lot of our house, well, all of our house really is suboptimal. It's below those temperatures. Now, I've been keeping my cheese, my milk that I'm making into cheese to set the curds in our airing cupboard because we do have our hot water on, and that's probably the warmest place in the house. But we've just done a check and it's only getting up to about 19 degrees in there. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that can be significant for these cultures to form. So what we're going to try and do now is we're going to try and create an environment. We're actually going to run the heating in our house or in a part of our house just for my cheese to try and get those temperatures set and trying to keep my cheese, my milk warm enough to form those curds. Like I say, this is the last part of my troubleshooting process. And if this doesn't work, I really don't know where I'm going from here because like I say, I'm using completely fresh ingredients and I'm following the same recipe that I've been following for years. I'm fairly confident though that we have nailed the problem. Okay, so I've got my temperature down to 22 degrees and I've added my rennet and my starter culture. So this isn't a recipe video, which is why I'm not showing you everything, but what I need to do now, the critical thing, I need to put this somewhere and not move it. It's really important if you're struggling with your curd setting, the last thing you want to do is be disturbing your milk. You need it to sit still for 24 hours. And I need that to happen at 20 to 22 degrees. So you might be asking yourself, well, if you've done this before, why are you suddenly struggling with the temperature? Well, it's cooler than it normally is at this time of year. We're really struggling with cold nights still. We're into April now and we're getting frosts overnight still. So that's really affecting the temperature in our house as well as outside. So I think that's the key. So we've actually turned our central heating on, which we would normally never do in April. And we're going to run that for 24 hours. Now, this is unsustainable for us, for my family. We're not going to keep our house heated all through the sort of spring just to make cheese. But what it will do is it will allow me to troubleshoot this element of my cheese making. So that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to pop it in here in the airing cupboard where we normally do with the heating on and with our thermometer in there. And hopefully that will give us some answers. Okay, so this is day 2. And as you can probably tell by the state of me, I've just got through the door from work. But the first thing I've got to report is from the second batch of milk, when I changed the rennet, I have got some cheese. Not much, not nearly as much as I would expect. So normally I would expect to have about 3 times that amount from that batch. So it's not just the rennet. I think I had 2 issues. I think I had the rennet and hopefully we'll go and check now on my next batch where we've raised the temperature a little bit. And in here, definite success. We've got proper curds. Let's get these out and have a look. So if we have a look, you'll see that's way on the top. And look at that lovely solid lump of curds. That's exactly what we're looking for. So when we now transfer this to our cheesecloth, because it's the same amount of milk I used as for this pathetic little amount of cheese. And I have tried a bit of this and it tastes fine. It's a little bit sour, a little bit more tangy than I would normally like, but it is nice still. It's still nice goat's cheese. I love goat's cheese and it's still delicious. It's just not perfect, shall we say. And like I say, that's due to the extra time that I gave it. It had an additional day waiting for the curds to set, and that is going to affect the flavour profile of the cheese, and it also obviously gave us a tiny yield. We're going to transfer this into a cheesecloth in a second, as soon as my wife's finished with the sink, and she's just cleaning our eggs. And then we'll see that the yield on this one is going to be, well, I would think at least 3 times that last one. So as you can see, the weighing curve, oh my God, I'm so happy because I've been struggling so far this year. And there you go, as you can see, a much bigger bundle of cheese. So you can see the difference. This is the colder set, and this is when I've, done everything I could to get that temperature up. So it's made a huge difference to the volume that I'm actually going to get. Obviously, this is going to reduce in size quite a lot because we're going to take the whey off. We're going to leave that now for 24 hours, but I think I've cracked the case. So if you're struggling with your curd setting, then those are the first 3 things that you really want to think about. If you're using the recipe similar to me, where you're using rennet and you're using a culture, a milk culture, then first things first. First thing to check is your rennet okay, or is it too old? Is your culture okay, or is it too old? Because over a period of time, it will drop off very, very slowly, and the amount of bacteria will actually change. The type of bacteria that are still alive in it will change as certain types of them die off. And then the final thing is to make sure that your temperatures are correct. And we've done all of those things, and look at the difference. I'm so happy we've got there. So if you find these videos valuable, there's several ways you can support them, and the easiest of which is just to press that like button, leave me a comment down below. You know the drill, all that usual stuff. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Maybe come check out the podcast, the Self-Sufficient Hub podcast, which is released 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you want to go even further, then please do consider becoming a patron and checking out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/self-sufficient hub. Thanks everyone. Speak to you really soon. Cheers.